Hello, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar in the series, the Learning Series. Today, we'll be talking about localizations and working with national and local partners. So for those of you who have been on any of these webinars before, welcome back. And if this is your first one, then welcome to the Learning Series. So this is a 10-week series run by the Learning Project, which is part of the Disasters and Emergencies Preparedness Program, and we're hosted here at Action Against Hunger. Just a few housekeeping points. We'll be joined by, typical meeting room issue there. We'll be joined by 3 speakers, 2 from the Asia region and 1 from the Africa region, and then the session will be facilitated by our learning advisor, Helen Asnake in Ethiopia. We have muted you all on entry, and we will keep you all muted until we open up for questions later in the session. If you have any questions or any issues if you can't hear us or any technical issues like that, or just questions that you think of while we hear from the panelists, feel free to write these in the chat. We'll be monitoring the chat throughout, and if there's technical issues, we'll see to them directly, and if there's questions for the panelists, we'll bring them to the open discussion later. And now I would like to welcome Helen. Helen, do you want to introduce this session?
Great. Thank you so much, Ida. Thanks everyone for joining today's webinar on localization, working with national and local partners. So today we will be talking about how we can better work in partnership with international NGOs and local actors. So the session, I will introduce you the session outline and then take you through some of the questions that we will be discussing with our guest speakers. So we have guest speakers from Kenya and also from Asia. So Patrick Catello, he will be joining us in a few minutes. I just confirmed with him that he's registering on Zoom. So he's Executive Director of Local Organization in Kenya, is also a partner of the program. And we have also Esteban from Philippines, is Executive Director of People's Disaster Risk Reduction Network. And we have Mohammed Ahmad, representing a network of more than 170 local organizations in Pakistan. Thank you so much, our guest speakers and all participants of the session. So I will take you through the questions that we'll be discussing on today's webinar. And then we will have also a time to receive comments and questions and any ideas and experiences from all of you. So the first question, these are kind of the few points that we will be touching on. And the first question will be, this is actually for the panelists to give us an example of how international actors have successfully involved in your organization in national preparedness activities and what factors led to this success. And the second question will be about what factors hinder national local organization involvement in national preparedness activities. And we'll also be talking about next steps, how can local and national NGOs involvement and leadership be strengthened in preparedness activities. So on this topic, we will be talking about how we can promote, equitable partnerships, a partnership that goes beyond funding and projects, and also a partnership where the voice of local actors are heard and valued, and also a support from international actors and international NGOs and donors, where to bring sustainable and strong institutional capacities for local organizations. And it's not also from one side, but on the other side, we'll be looking at what should the role of local and national actors in this process be. So these are the introductory questions for you, and I will read the questions one by one. And I will give the time for our guest speakers to respond to the questions, and then we'll have time for discussion. So I'll read the first question now, and then we'll give the chance for our guest speakers. Great. So question one, how international actors have successfully involved your organization in national preparedness activities? So are there any examples, positive examples from your experience that you want to share with our audience? Great. Esteban, may we start from you? Hello? Hello, Esteban, can you hear me? Hello, can everybody hear me?
Yeah.
Great, great, great. Who's speaking, Esteban?
No, this is Ahmad.
Ahmad, okay, Mohammed, great. So we can start from you, and then I just read the first question. So we give the room for you to share your experience, or positive experience of working with international organizations in preparedness activities.
Thanks for inviting to the webinar.
Sorry, Mohammed, and just to clarify, each speaker will have 3 minutes to respond to the questions. So that we have 3 questions, we give you time, another 3 minutes for each question. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, and we will abide by the rule. Let me share some examples from NHN, like as you mentioned in your presentation, that a network of 172 organizations in Pakistan. So UN is involving us. We have very good collaboration with the UN agencies, but keep that aside. I'll come to the NNGO, as you mentioned in your question. So START network, just let me give you an example of the START network that they have involved NHN as partner in their initiative like shifting the power and search capacity from the start. And another example I have that is of like Asian Disaster Preparedness Center. So we are designing in a project in coordination with them, and we took on board government of Pakistan, the NDMA, National Disaster Management Authority, and we are designing a project for preparedness, and hope so we will be implementing together. So the best way is to design in collaboration with the national actors. If it is a government, if it is the local or national NGOs, better if you have a network in that country, so that is a collective voice. Better engage. We need to engage the local network with along with the government, the national government, design, plan, and then implement, while giving them lead and ownership of the activities. So I have these two. I can share a lot of success stories, but shifting the power is one. Such capacity from the DEPP initiative, that is another, over here in Pakistan. And now we are working with the ADPC, and we are moving ahead with the Asian Preparedness Partnership in the region with them. So these are a few examples. So better co-design, co-implement with the national actor is the best approach towards the success. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Some participants have asked to introduce yourself and your role. So apologies for not doing that at the very beginning. So please introduce yourself to the audience. Thank you. Hello?
Please, if you repeat.
Yeah, some participants asked you to introduce yourself and your role. I thought I have done it in the beginning, but it will be good to hear from you. just to have an introduction.
Okay, my name is Muhammad Ahmad, and I'm an executive director of a local organization. We're here in Pakistan, but at the same time, I'm chairing a national humanitarian network of 172 national organization, humanitarian organization in Pakistan. So this is a brief introduction.
Thank you so much, Mohammed, for sharing your experience on this. Now we will go to the next speaker, Elsabat. Can you hear me? Esteban, can you hear me?
Hi, Helen. This is Liz. We are trying to get a hold of Esteban, but he seems to be unable to unmute himself.
Okay.
We could go on to the next speaker. Is
Patrick?
Is Patrick online?
Is Patrick with us?
If he's not, this is okay, because we've kind of planned for this as well, just in case there were some technical difficulties. We've actually asked all of the speakers to send in their points to us in advance, so their responses to each of the questions. If you want, I can read through Patrick's answers while we see if Esteban can try and connect.
Yeah, that would be great, Liz. Thank you.
Okay, so bear in mind, like, this is not my answers, this is somebody else's answers. So Helen, would you like to just introduce who Patrick is? Hopefully he'll join later so we can answer the other questions, but. Helen?
Sorry, there is a bit of background noise from my side, but Patrick is an executive director for PASIDA, a local organization. He's also a partner with our project in Kenya, which is Shifting the Power. So I hope he will be joining us very soon, but till then, he has also shared his experience to this webinar, which Liz will be reading it for us. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, can I just, I'm just gonna check my, okay, yes, so everyone can hear me. Basically, the points, the success points that Patrick has sent in include that through his work with Shifting the Power, and if people don't know what the Shifting the Power project is, it is a project that works with local and national humanitarian partners in 5 countries, and they do capacity development for these partners, but they do it in a way that really promotes the agency and the leadership of the. Sorry, one second. I'm having technical difficulties from this side. Yeah, sorry. The agency and the leadership of these partners. So these partners, they are assisted by the Shifting the Power project through a capacity self-assessment. And this helps these local and national partners to identify the gaps and needs in their own capacity for preparedness. And through this self-assessment, it's much easier for these partners to identify the needs that are most relevant to them. And so it's not donor-driven, it's not NNGOs saying, you need to build your capacity in this area. It's them actually determining what they need to do for themselves. And in Kenya, the Shifting the Power project has used the SHAPE framework. So this is the Strategic Humanitarian Assessment and Participant Empowerment Framework. And through that, they've had some good successes with, sorry, apologies, I'm getting messages from people. Anyway. Also, in Kenya, through the DEPP and the networks that have been established in Kenya, there have been a lot of enhancement of the local NGO voices and representation in humanitarian platforms and networks. There have been a lot of research that has been produced. So many research pieces have been produced, including a learning review, case studies, pieces on the localization of aid. And these all point to the importance of involving local and national partners in decision-making processes to do with humanitarian preparedness. And finally, through the collaboration that's been happening because of the disaster center program, and the various engagements that have been happening at the country level, have been many more platforms established at which they can actually do advocacy for the government and engagements with the government. Anyway, I summarize that badly because I just have very brief bullet points and I'm talking about what I know from the Shifting the Power project. But that's what we know for now.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. We kind of thought of this option just in case connection is not on our favor or people are not able to connect. So good to have the highlights from Patrick. And then maybe, is Esteban able to join us now? Esteban, can you hear me?
Yes, good morning.
Great
yes.
to have you. Good morning.
How about me? Can you hear me? Yes.
Great, I can hear you very well. So please introduce yourself to the audience and then you can share your experience on successful experience of working with international NGOs in national preparedness activities.
Yes, thank you. I'm Bong Masagka. I'm the current Executive Director of the People's Disaster Risk Reduction Network and currently the convener of the Balik Local, an advocacy group that calls for the strengthening of locally led humanitarian response in the Philippines. Our organization was actually formed in anticipation of the Mount Pinatubo eruption in 1991 that subsequently conducted disaster monitoring, relief, rehabilitation, and advocacy work within the poverty reduction framework. This is with the support coming from different international non-government organizations, non-affected local and national organizations based in other provinces through mobilization of in-kind relief items, funding, and surge staff. Critically working with the government, it actually provided us room to understand the macro and micro disaster situation, including the government institutional limitations. Due to the long-term threat of lahar, flooding, and other hazards in our geographical focus, disaster preparedness then was our primary advocacy. One of our strategies in the 1990s until maybe in 2010, using the existing Presidential Decree 1566 or the Policy Framework 10 that actually calls for the strengthening of the Philippine disaster control capability and establishing the national program on community disaster preparedness. That's actually the former law that was superseded by the current Republic Act 10121 or the Philippine DRR Act of 2010. PDRN has indirect and direct involvement in national preparedness activities with international actors that can be characterized into different levels, such as one, information sharing. Basically, we are just mere invited as participants to know or listen about the program on disaster preparedness by the international actors. Two, consultation that solicits recommendations to enhance disaster preparedness program of the international actors. We have also experienced a direct engagement where initiatives emanates from us based on the situation and needs of communities, local government units that are working, and the civil society organizations that we're also collaborating with, but no sustainable engagement in the project. The last one is more partnership, the clear partnership with clear roles with NNGOs, the government agencies, local government units, and other actors where organization directly involved from assessment, conceptualization, implementation, monitoring, and evaluation. Using the community-based DRRM, or what we call community-based disaster management before, was very important and key in our involvement in national disaster preparedness activities that were basically related to capacity building, institutionalization of local BRRM system, risk assessment and planning, emergency preparedness and response, developing partnership, and knowledge building. Concretely, in partnership with, specifically with Oxfam, we directly implement various disaster preparedness activities aligned with the national priorities. One of these activities we call the provincial readiness to institutionalize a mainstream risk reduction that actually funded by the European Union. It actually calls also to concretize risk assessment, contingency planning, while improving the institutional policy system of the local government units. Clearly, there was participation of the different agencies of government, like the Department of Interior and Local Government, the National Economic Development Authority, and the Office of Civil Defense. At the municipal level, we also engage in sustaining disaster management initiatives through the integration of local development planning, apart from the capacity building support of village level risk assessment and planning. This initiative actually promoted and maximized existing government assessment planning tools that integrates disaster, climate, and development concerns. One of these tools called community-based monitoring system, a tool that builds household-level baseline information parallel with knowledge management and policy advocacy at the local and national levels. Another tool we actually promoted, tool of the government, is the rationalized planning system. The Department of Interior and Local Government, a tool that actually integrate BRRM in development planning processes. This is also parallel to our call of one assessment and one planning process, especially in preparing and responding to emergencies. Promotion of typhoon and earthquake-resistant building construction techniques that started in 1998 was also supported by ECHO with our friends NGO partner like the International Emergency Action or AUI. This effort was in recognition of countries' high vulnerability to earthquake and tropical cyclone vis-a-vis the implementation of the
Hello, Esteban. Esteban,
yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry,
yes.
if you could also, summarize your points for question 1, so that you will also come back to you again on the other questions. Great,
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Some of the factors maybe of our success is one, PRN was consciously engaged in conceptualization of the project that contributed to the assessment and articulation of interventions based on local gaps in needs, specifically the high-risk communities. There was also the utilization of evidences of good practices in our country that we actually utilize the existing government platform like the good practices in local governance, the facility for adaptation or replication initiated by or led by BILG. Engaging government agencies in local government units at the start of the project is very important. And I think that actually helps all of the stakeholders to level off. The application of the principle of inclusivity in the project process was critical, that actually put the high-risk communities as part of decision-making processes. This constant interaction actually helps clear and have a clear role in the implementation of projects.
Great.
Another factor may be flexibility of NGOs, our partner, in terms of resource allocation based on changing needs and environment. I think that's all.
Great, thank you so much, Esteban. Thank you, Mohammed, as well, and Liz, for sharing experience of Patrick on successful experience of working with international actors and what factors lead to this success. Okay, now we will be looking at the next question, and again, I will give a chance for our speakers to respond to this. We will display the next slide. Great. So now we will be talking about what factor, I hope you can all see the slides. Sorry, we couldn't be on video because it really affects the connectivity. So that's why we are all on audio. I have seen a question on that, thanks. So what factors hinder, the second question is about what factors hinder local national organizations' involvement in national preparedness activities. So we have seen the successful examples of working with international NGOs, and now we will be talking about the challenges. And then again, I will give a chance for the two speakers to share their experiences on this for 3 minutes each, just to give a room for discussion for the other participants as well. So again, we can, I think, continue with you, Esteban, and then Mohammed can join after you. So can you please share your experience on this? Thank you.
Yeah. Just to summarize, generally, I firmly believe that international actors actually base their disaster preparedness initiatives on the assessment and priorities of the national government, apart from, of course, inputs from their local partners. However, there are limitations in managing disaster preparedness programs and activities that lack actually cohesiveness and coherence caused by poor leadership, specifically if various actors are implementing with different focus interventions in even geographical areas. One of maybe challenges that the local and national NGOs have limited engagement, especially in the process of the assessment. Actually, there's a tendency that international actors or even national non-government organizations are solely own initiative, and thus local and national government concerns serve only as sometimes recipient, if not an auxiliary implementation of the project. Much more, we can see community representatives in the decision-making process. International actors have the tendency also to direct, implement, that hinders the full engagement and serve only as mere spectators, or sometimes respondents to consultations. Opportunities for participation were also limited to Manila-based NGOs, meaning NGOs based in the center or in Metro Manila. There's a tendency to siphon the opportunities, and there's a lack of how it will be decentralized to different localities.
Okay.
And another one is the limitations of local and national NGOs in terms of capacities, priorities, that sometimes cannot actually commit because of their characteristics as a small in terms of coverage. I think that's some of the challenge.
Great, great. Thank you so much, Esteban. Now I give the room for Mohammed. Mohammed, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Mohammed, great. So if you could also share briefly about your experience on the challenges that hinder local national organizations' involvement.
Thanks, Helen. My points will be some point will be the repetition, as Esteban said it, but let me reassert some of the point. What I think that there is a from the national actor, national government, as well as from the international actor. This issue access towards like some of the countries we are facing Secondly, there is a disorganized national structure of the organization, of the humanitarian organization especially, and sometimes we are lacking fora within the government for the said matter. There is a more focus on response on the immediate issue and less focus on the long-term issue or preparedness, I can say. So, some due to time constraint or resource constraint, maybe they are designing. So,
okay.
I think this is the responsibility of the both sides to improve the situation. Sorry, Helen?
Yeah, I can hear you very well.
Okay.
I think all participants are also listening. There are also some questions. I will direct them to you while after the third question. Great, thank you so much again. And I will read the third question for you, which is about how national local organizations, how national local organizations involvement or leadership in national preparedness activities be increased. So on this question, it will be very great to hear your experience on how this could be possible to strengthen involvement in leadership of national local organizations and share experience of you on this. I will give you just 2 to 3 minutes for both of you. Sorry, it's just to respond to some of the questions that we are being asked from participants and to make the room open for discussion. Thank you so much for understanding, and I will give the room again for Mohammed to share your experience on this.
Thanks. National preparedness needs permanent and long-term planning and intervention. It's like the national government and then the national civil society. They must lead it, own it, and sustain it. We are talking of shift in the power. We need to talk of the shift in the responsibility and ownership as well. And the national system must own it. This is my point. International actors and donors may play a supporting role and work as a facilitator and connector. They can coordinate and collaborate with the national structure while designing intervention, capacitate the national system first. If they are not capacitated, if there are other governance issues, so the international actor can support that there. But the leadership should go to the national system and the national actor. They must realize it. We must realize it, that this is our prime responsibility, and we should be proactively engaging other actors for the said matter. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Mohammed. Now I will give the room for Esteban to share his experience on involvement of local organizations on preparedness activities in terms of strengthening leadership. Please share your experience to us briefly, and then we give the room to open the discussion. Perfect. Thank you. Mohammed?
Yes.
Great. Please go ahead. Thank you.
Hello?
Yes.
Yes, you can hear me.
Yes, I can hear you very well.
Concretely, I think the local and national NGOs can be provided with more time and opportunities to engage with other international actors, regional events, forums, and training as one of the avenues for exposure, at the same time elaborate their own context and priorities towards influencing also others in terms of priorities of donors and aid agencies. Another one is maybe the conduct of regular, maybe yearly multi-sectoral stakeholders updating of risk assessment and planning. That means donors, the INGOs, local government and the national or local organization. Another one would be the development NGOs in the country and the existing people's organizations that are actually scattered all over the region are existing. And I think that's one area where the collaborative, mechanism that can be supported by NGOs and donors, maybe it's worth to invest on that and how we can maximize that. There are also government and led development platforms at various levels where the private, religious NGOs and POs are actively part of decision-making processes, like the Regional Development Council and the Local Development Council, apart from the existing local DRRM Council. And this way, all the disaster preparedness plan, development plans will be integrated into one plan, because that's one very burden of local government units, how they will prepare the various plans that the national government is, the mandate of the local government unit. Then I think one also is the appropriate adoption of appropriate mechanism of feedbacking. This is one big assignment among the civil society organizations, especially to those who are representing the civil society organizations in decision making, like the National DRRM Council. And now we are actually pushing or calling that the humanitarian country team can be represented by, more local NGOs. Then another one is maybe recognition and respect of the current system of the government as lead by NGOs and the UN agencies, and even the local CSOs. Then the continuing leveling off to really unify and understand the principles of partnership, roles, and priorities. And I think that should be practiced, not to remain a slogan. No? Multi-stakeholders regular updating is very important, because the situation changes every now and then. So all the risk assessment, even though the country has already done that, I think have to be reviewed, and based on the gaps, we can actually, prioritize intervention. International actors also, including donors, can also focus on supporting the role of the government, especially at the national and local government units, by filling the gaps in terms of resources, technical support, if necessary. And one thing, the supportive role of the international actor, actually it is clear in the Sendai framework for action that we have the supportive role, including the international actors, to government, so that it will contribute in developing a more strategic local leadership at the national, regional, and local level.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Esteban. I will give the chance to Liz to share Patrick's point, who is not able to join us because of the connection. So please, Liz, go ahead on these two questions.
Sure, I will be very, very brief. I'll just read out his main points. So one of the things that he thinks should happen is, and I think this is touched on by the other two speakers, involvement of all stakeholders. So that's everyone involved in a partnership, NGOs, local NGOs, community members, governments, at all levels of planning, implementation, decision-making, and also monitoring and evaluation. He also mentioned affirmative action for the direct access of funding to help strengthen areas, particularly around resilience and preparedness for local communities, because there is often limited funding. There's a lot of funding that goes into response and aid, but not much that goes into resilience and preparedness. Capacity building of local and national actors, partners, and also not forgetting relevant government authorities, capacity building in particular aspects for them, and also community members. And finally, NGOs can play, and local and national NGOs, everyone has a role to play in the facilitation on policy engagements with the government and other influential actors like donors.
Great. Thank you so much, Liz. Thank you all our guest speakers. Now is time for discussion. Please feel free to ask your questions or share any experience you want to share in this forum. We have been receiving some questions. I'll read them. And you can also share your questions on the chat box, or we can also hear your voice. Great. Maybe you can start from the chat box questions. Okay, Eve asked about successful examples of working. Okay, let me read the question. How local national organizations involved successfully international actors, and what factors lead to success? I think it's about the first questions. Our panel shared examples on that. We can share the materials for more, the slides, and also the speaker's notes. Great. Any other question, experiences? Okay.
Can I share? Can I respond?
Please go ahead.
Yes, it's a very relevant question, and we reflected upon it, but let me reassert. Like we as NHN engage with the START network initiative over here in Pakistan while they were implementing their project in Pakistan. It was the first initiative we engaged with, the shift in the path. That was quite relevant to our vision. And in fact, we shared our vision with them, so we first coordinate and then collaborate with that initiative. And slowly and gradually, we engage other initiative of the START network. Same time they approach us. And both the START network members and the local network, like the national network of NHN, we feel that we can multiply the impact of the initiatives while working together. So now when they get into the start evolve process, now we are part of that process right from the beginning. So now we are co-designing the process. We are in the decision-making process. So I think this is one of the glaring examples that by showing performance and your productivity and effectivity, you can create a space. I'm talking of the local and national organization. So your performance can create a space for you to move ahead with the international actor and be in the decision-making body. And the same we are doing with the UN agencies. We got involved with them, and now we have got we have gotten 2 seats in each city at the top level, and we are in the every decision-making body and forum of the UN right now in Pakistan. So it needs a continuous follow-up, performance, and vision to move forward. So this is my reply to
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Mohammed. I can see someone raised, Mublai has raised her hand. Oh, sorry. So we can hear from you now your questions. Mublai, can you hear me? Okay. Okay, in the meantime, I can also read the other remarks. Coordinating with existing network is a good strategy to work in synchronize with other organizations rather than working alone. Good point. And we have questions from Vittorio. for the speakers. In terms of working with the government, the points raised by Esteban make perfect sense. What do the panelists think would be the case to follow when there is more political tension between government and humanitarian organizations? See, for example, the Myanmar Rohingya emergency, the government is against NGOs and restricted space. Any thoughts on this? Thank you, Vittorio, for your questions. Now I direct this for our panelists.
Just to save time, I'll share my experience of Pakistan. Before we were disorganized, so nobody wanted to contact us because they were confused whom to contact for the preparedness or for any strategic planning in Pakistan. When we got together and this network formed in 2010, slowly and gradually, there is a harmony among the national organization, and we have a structure and then a leadership, a shared leadership, and then the international actors and the government and the UN agencies, they start contacting us and we start engaging them, and slowly and gradually understanding develop. This part may be relevant to the second question as well. There is always a denial at the start, but performance, transparency is a key to create a space for the national organization. If it is with the government, if it is with the UN, if it is with the international community. So by doing that, we move forward and we got space in the government circle, in the UN agencies, and now we are fully engaged with the international actors. So organization or networking of the local and national organization is a key, and then how to move forward that network so that they can create a space and they move forward from the denial phase to the acknowledgement, and then from the acknowledgement of their performance towards the partnership with the government and with the international stakeholder. So that's my response.
Great, thank you so much, Mohammed. I just got confirmation from Patrick. He's also with us now. Patrick, if you want to add just few points on this, there is a question asked on political tension between government and humanitarian organizations and how we can work with the government on this regard.
Yeah.
Please go ahead, Patrick. Patrick, can you hear me?
Hello, can I share something?
Esteban, sure, please go ahead.
I think we have to go back to basics on the principles of humanitarian work. Well, looking at Code of Conduct #1 is humanitarian imperative comes first. Basically, all the barriers, whether it's political or whatever barriers, that we have to address that immediately. And looking who is the prime responsible for humanitarian work is the government. And I think we should treat as government as very important entity. And our role as support should not actually antagonize them, but rather to build a space where we can work together. Well, of course, there should be a process of leveling off in terms of principles, in terms of processes, but basically the ultimate goal why we need to respond is to save lives. And I think there's no question, even if the government, the military have the same purpose. And I think the continuous dialogue, the backdoor negotiation, as I think necessary just to, create a space where we can work together and discuss things together. I think that's very basic,
Great. Thank you so much, Esteban. There is also another question from Diane. The question is, if you can cite one good example, most striking contribution of DEPP, Disaster Emergencies and Preparedness Program, in the localization campaign in your countries? Panelists, do you have any experience to share with regards to your experience on working with the DEPP on localization campaign?
Well, for the Philippines, the DEPP project is basically one key factor, in providing space among the local civil society organizations, especially to work together to harmonize principles, harmonize processes, building common framework, especially that the country has a lot of development organizations. Now, that space provided by the START network actually put us together and, have a continuing discussion on strengthening our capacity and putting humanitarian work as key in the overall development work. That's why I think the continuing process of capacity building, concretely, we did some harmonization of the various modules on humanitarian work. But I think DEPP initially started that, and we are now replicating that and utilizing that module in providing training, orientation among the development organizations that go into humanitarian work. I think that's one big thing.
Great.
Second, okay, the mechanism of okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Esteban. We have also another experience from Moblai. Moblai, would you like to share your experience with us on this? Hello? Okay, I have seen points shared on the chat box. So Moblai, can you hear me? Great, then maybe we will move to the other question. Henok has asked a question. Okay, engagement with government and communities in the design stage of project is very critical for the implementation of projects and programs. This has been a forgotten practice and uptake of the project after the lifetime of the project. I really wonder to know why practice is difficult to know, why this practice is difficult to implement. Any thought from the panelists? I think we will have to get a chance to hear one response for 2 minutes, and then we will be concluding. So any response for Henok's question, how to engage government at the very start?
I think we partially respond this question, but why it is no more in practice. So there was, like before, it was a long-term development projects, and their approach were programmatic. And now in the middle of why it is so, because of the disaster, because of the hurriness or whatever, because of the time constraint maybe, the projects were designed, like the partnership were designed project-based. Mostly the international actors were implementing themselves. So, and there was a disconnect of the local community and the local organization and the government in the process. So that's why we have lost somewhere the connectivity between the international actor and the local community somehow. Now we need to reconnect the international community with the national, and then with the local community. And if we are designing any project, we need to keep the vulnerable communities at the center. It requires resources, it requires time, so be it. Preparedness is the name of, like, you cannot do preparedness without this approach. but somehow we were so overwhelmed by the response for the last few years, so we couldn't focus on the preparedness issue. But let me respond on the localization part of the second last question. We in Pakistan, after working with Shifting the Power, we developed a charter of commitment in line with the localization and charter for change and the rest of the initiative of the, in line with the rest of the initiative for localization. And the WHO's commitment. In fact, we develop a charter of commitment. And first, we sign an MOU, sign MOUs with the consortia partners in Pakistan. And how we are carrying that process forward with the non-consortia member. Like yesterday, we signed it with the Trocare. It was not a consortia member for the Shifting the Power. And we are moving ahead with the PHF, like it's a forum for the international NGOs. So we have started this process in Pakistan. Hope so. We develop different indicator like the governance, like the resource, shifting of resources, shifting of knowledge, capacity building of the local organizers. Like it's, you can say we are ensuring localization marker of the in the intervention of the international actor. We have started this process, and now after 6 months, now we are starting review of that. So NHN is basically the custodian of, and we will make each other accountable for this process. Not only international actors, but the responsibility lies on the national actors as well, as a recipient of the power, as a recipient of the responsibility, as a recipient of the resources. So we have started this, and so far so good. Let's see what will happen in the future.
Great, thank you so much, Mohammed. Any reflections? Any reflections from our audience?
Maybe just one quick response to that
very
question.
Very quick,
yeah.
Right? Great, thank you.
Yeah, I think it is not difficult practice for the development NGOs working now on humanitarian work to really consider community organizing as one strategy in preparing the community. And community organizing actually that builds, people capacity to, utilize their own way of responding, coping, and, recovering from any impact disasters. I think that is only our maybe assignment, how we can integrate that in designing the project. The point is, I think the donors and the international NGOs should take into consideration the gains that can be achieved in doing community organizing. Because as of now, our assumption is that it is all clear to us that there's no divide between humanitarian and development. And I think that has to be established. That's why, as part of our advocacy, we have to consider funding or providing resources in a more strategic way, community organizing, capacity building of people's organizations and local government units, because strengthening local capacity actually do not ends on training. We have to continuously, adapt that system, provide continuing resources. One point is that we need to reassess and reassess, meaning regularly we have to find resources for assessment and planning and so forth. So it's a continuing process. You have to have more resources on that and be patient on the process.
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Esteban. There is one remark, I think. I just want to read that, and then we will have a close-up note. So this is from Devina. So the common problem arises during emergency and disaster response with local and national government is that at first they were not able to be part of the collaborative efforts and plan of local national NGOs. Yet during response, we are trying them to be involved and immersed as much as possible, adapt to each local national NGO standards. Precisely, this would create chaos and non-compliance from their end. That's a very good point. So it's about stressing the point that we need to engage government and all local national actors from the very beginning, not at the point of responding to any humanitarian crisis. Thank you so much. Now I will just make few notes for closing this session. I know there are questions and more reflections, but we invite you to continue this discussion on our learning platform. So I think the main takeaway, I think our panelists are excellent. They have just shown us very key points that we should take from this session. I'm just going to share my reflections. So from international NGOs, donors, international actors side, it's about building equitable partnership with local national actors and involvement of national actors in the design and response of any humanitarian intervention. And also it's about creating opportunities to access regional and international platforms, dialogues for local actors to be part of the discussions and decision-making processes. And the other is access to funding, which is also an issue, to bring sustainable solutions to the community. And from national and local actors, what we have seen is strengthening their own capacity. I have seen Mohammed making this point very strongly. So showcasing evidence of, best practices and capacity and accountability mechanisms would give us a room to better respond to any humanitarian crisis and give us a chance to build our capacity from local national actors' point of view. And engaging in existing networks and platforms, there are platforms that are open in each country and at regions, so making visible contribution to the platforms, and having a strategic niche or focus in the humanitarian and preparedness interventions, not responding to funding calls or any kind of initiatives, but having a strategic niche and focus in their own intervention and in their areas. And the other final point I want to make is reviewing organizational policies and strategies that are best suited for humanitarian response. We have seen this from our Shifting the Power project, making significant contributions in the capacity of local and national actors. So thank you so much all for joining. I think we had almost 52 participants for today's session. Thanks so much for joining. Please continue discussing on this topic on our learning platform. And we'll be sharing the recording and also the slides and the materials with all of you on email. Thanks a lot. Have a great day.